Welcome to the Ketamine Startup Podcast. And here, this is where we talk about, what's it like to run a clinic and how to start one, the mindset and all the good stuff that goes into it. And today's focus is about self-knowledge and how that is super important when you start your ketamine clinic.
I think it's really important to know ourselves when we're starting up a ketamine clinic. And by knowing ourselves better, we can actually be the best version of ourselves. Plus, we can get the right people on our team. And so, this episode will go over the three archetypes. So, listen till the very end so you can kind of figure out what type of archetype you may fit in. And so that you do know yourself a bit better. Also, I do want to acknowledge the challenge of burnout, especially in medicine these days in healthcare. I think with at least in emergency medicine, we have one of the highest rates of burnout. Some reports of like 2 out of 3 emergency physicians face burnout. And then overall, from a healthcare trend, I think definitely the majority, over 50% of physicians do face burnout. And when we know ourselves, I think we can combat that in a way and also get more fulfillment in our lives as well.
But I think it also is important to acknowledge that a lot of people coming into opening a ketamine clinic is coming from a space of burnout. That's sometimes that's the impetus that you need to get out of your situation to do something new, something risky, something way out there. And so that goes back to you need to know who you are when you're doing something new. And let's why don't we dive into the three archetypes? Okay. There are three archetypes. They are the artist, the leader, and the entrepreneur. And, the artist are the ones, think of it, classic attending who loves the art of medicine. And in this case, really loves the science behind ketamine. Maybe they've done ketamine research. Maybe they actually enjoy reading the scientific literature. They enjoy the creating that safe container that a ketamine experience can be had in. And, they're key. They're the ones that are interacting with the patients, really serving them, enjoying that whole experience.
The next archetype is the leader or the manager archetype. And the manager leader, they're kind of one who motivates others naturally. They're really good with operations and processes, making things flow in the ketamine clinic, running the business side, managing the staff, and kind of making the flow of the experience really good for the patient. And they may not necessarily be into like direct patient care per se, but they're kind of looking at the clinic from a different perspective.
And then you have the entrepreneur. This is your classic business person. The classic type you think of an entrepreneur starting a business. They're unafraid of taking risks. They are thinking of how can I innovate the current space that we're in, what's going to happen next for ketamine clinics. They may even been talking about, what's ketamine clinics role in, these upcoming MDMA and psilocybin and all these things. And so they're the ones that are unafraid to ask for money to help scale your business. It's time to grow. They're trying to help figure out ways you can run it better. It's kind of almost like a more broad, open thinking. The manager, leader is kind of the every day to day running of the business. And then you have your artist that is actually makes the business happen. Without the artist, there wouldn't be a patient getting ketamine infusions from a person.
Yeah, and for me, I personally identify most as an artist because I actually love the delivery of ketamine therapy. I love seeing the patients. I love researching and staying up to date on the latest scientific article that's been published about ketamine therapy. So that's really useful. And then I would say for you, Kim, you're more of the manager or leader
Oh,
because you definitely
totally.
help with our operations and smoothing things out.
I mean, and the thing is that the what you are naturally going to be is something that you've always been doing. Like for me, before we even started a ketamine clinic, I was, like a what do you call it? Like it was an associate chair or department point person for one of the sites that our department was in. I'm a board certified ophthalmologist. We had this location, and I'm the one that went to meetings, and I liked that. Like to me, I liked trying to figure out how can we run this more efficiently? How can I make this better for my, colleagues? You know, When I was in high school, I was the editor of a yearbook. I didn't necessarily I enjoyed making, taking photos, writing, but what I really liked was managing the photographers, the copywriters, the designers. And so these are themes that I saw throughout my life. And like for you, Sam, you've had ketamine throughout your whole life, as a researcher and all these things.
Yeah, I mean, historically I've been working with ketamine for quite a bit of time. I mean, when I was in undergrad in college in Seattle, I actually used ketamine on the animals that we were studying and researching. So really familiar with it. And yeah, I've actually tried being the manager slash leader. Um, for example, when I was the associate medical director of ER back in the days, I did it and it just wasn't really fulfilling for me as much as I thought it would be. And there was a lot of meetings and committees, and everything was very slow moving. So some people like that process, but for me, it really was not something that I was particularly interested in. What was interesting though was I did happen to be offered a promotion to be the medical director. And that was at that point where I'm like, you know what? I'm climbing up this ladder. It doesn't feel like the right ladder, or the ladder is not necessarily up against the right building. So that's when I had to pivot, make a change to know myself, who I really am, and discover, this kind of archetypes and finding out and figuring out exactly who I am. Now, I do want to mention that there's kind of a primary. So my primary archetype would be more of the artist. My secondary archetype would be more of the entrepreneur. And so you, the listener, may have both a primary and a secondary, but one that's really strong and then a secondary. Now, of course, there's that third archetype where that may be challenging for you. And so for us, fortunately, I have kind of like a board of directors or advisors. It's kind of non-official roles, but really just friends. One buddy of mine, he is an emergency physician, but also owns a large ambulance company down here in California. And then another friend who's a real estate developer. So I'm able to like bounce ideas off of the entrepreneur archetype to really support our team.
Yeah, for me, my secondary, or the one that had to be developed to get through life, or, being a physician, for me was the artist. Sure, I enjoyed patients, and I enjoyed doing those things. But to me, what was more natural was, looking at spreadsheets of when patients checked in and when they came out, or, running numbers. And for me, the entrepreneur is like the weakest area for me. And it's not necessarily a weakness, but also it can be something you have no interest in. And the reality is, for your practice to thrive, for your business to thrive, you need all three, right? And I think, especially, a lot of physicians, a lot of people in the healthcare field, we're perfectionists. And, for the most part, we kind of feel that we need to, because if we're not on our A game, if we're not, you know, um, bolstering our weaknesses, reading up, learning how we could be better, people die, people get maimed, people get ill and sick. And so, but the thing is when you're starting a business, and especially those first few months and you're just starting out, you just really need to lean in on what you do well, because you're going to be juggling so much. The last thing you do is be, if you're like, oh, I'm so uncomfortable with trying to raise money and I don't know how to do this, or gosh, I don't even know how to do a website. Um, you know, you're going to be spinning your wheels. You need to take action. And so, where you can take action is what you can easily and naturally do. And that is why partnering is so key at the beginning. And whether that is what do you call it, formal business relationship, or it's like a mastermind group, that's what's going to help you, be the catalyst to get this actually going. And then here's the thing, too: the longer you're in business, you just naturally are going to strengthen those other weak areas.
Yeah, totally. I think just to reiterate the point of building a team, knowing who you are, and then finding other people who can complement kind of your, weaknesses or strengths so that you don't have like the same three archetypes in the business. I remember before we had actually launched back in, I think, 2016, 2017, I had contemplated opening up this ketamine clinic. And I was working with two other physicians. And I think the problem that it didn't work out with the other two physicians initially was we were both art, or all three of us were artists. And so we all kind of gravitated towards that. And we weren't aware of this concept of the archetypes and finding the right people on the team. And I think that ultimately led to that group kind of dissolving. We were all excited when we first started, but then ultimately it just kind of dissolved out. Unfortunately, Kim was there and she backed me up, and we were able to co-create and start up Reset Ketamine in Palm Springs. And now we've been open for 5 years. And although Kim doesn't do any of the clinical stuff, she plays a huge role in the operation side, the management side, helping with optimizing everything, helping with the social media marketing, everything in that aspect. And again, so knowing who you are out of these three archetypes and then partnering with people who match you and who can complement you, I think it's really key for a successful ketamine clinic.
And that's what we've seen in the students that have taken our course and have, we've been involved with helping is when they start with a team, like they just, you know, blast off into space in a good way, in like the sense of like their business is going. It runs very quickly. You're able to get that momentum when you have that team. And sometimes, like, you don't even realize the team is around you. Like, you just have to have a shift in perspective because, hello, I mean, we were both next to each other, living together, married, and it didn't occur to us for a good couple years that we could work together. Um, and so, just, I encourage you, after discovering which archetype you are, if you're not clear on it, which we're going to give you a couple exercise here in a sec. Um, once you figure out which one you are, just be chill about it, but just think about who in your community, who in your network, your friends, your circles are those other archetypes and that you would want to work with because this is, we necessarily should believe you shouldn't believe your business is your baby, but honestly, the reality is when you first start out, you care about it so much like your baby. And so you want to be able to work with people that you enjoy and want to work with. But the first place to start is to look at who you already know. So you want to do an exercise here to figure out what your archetype is.
Yeah, let's jump in, Kim.
All right, so this first one, exercise number one, is reflect upon your past. What were the jobs or positions in high school or in college, or jobs that you may have held? What summer jobs did you do as a kid? So just think back. What did you do? And say, for my example was, I was involved in yearbook. In high school, I was an editor. Um, did you create layouts? Did you find people to sponsor yearbook pages? Or, were you entrepreneurial and, you picked flowers from other people's garden and sold them to other people? Did you, paint or draw or write and sell like little comic books or whatever? So, like, what were the things you naturally did, where you weren't prompted to do, or things that you enjoyed?
And so here's another scenario. So let's say that you lost your job today. What is your natural instinct to go towards? Is it like finding something where you can immediately apply your skills? Are you more of a take charge, management, leadership type? Or do you want to start fresh with a new venture and get a bunch of angel investors to start your company? And again, when you ask yourself and reflect upon these questions, I think you can use your gestalt and just kind of know, like, all right, what is the first one that I'm aiming towards? Which one really resonates with me? So it's all about leaning into your natural strengths. Totally. And again, we do all have a bit of each archetype, but there's mainly a dominant one, your primary, and then your secondary. And then as you grow, you can also develop some of the other ones. But more importantly, finding the right people on the team. There's this old proverb, if you want to go fast, you go alone. If you want to go far, you go together. And so, again, building the right team, I would say it's incredibly crucial for the success of your ketamine clinic business.
And I'd say though, if you're feeling like overwhelmed with like, geez, I'm going to leave a job or I'm going to be adding this to what I already do. And gosh, you guys are telling me I need to like build a team. Start small, start simple. First step is you got to be clear on who you are. Sometimes we like to skip over this, like, personal reflection. We tell our patients to meditate. We tell them to rest and sleep. We tell them to like, just chill out and, get to know themselves and whatnot. And yet it's sometimes hard to apply it to ourselves. But remember, you need to do this so that you can build the foundation for a really solid ketamine clinic. It's not just about, signing the lease. It's not just about finding somebody to do your marketing and screening patients. This is opening up a ketamine clinic has been one of the things that has led to so much personal growth as well as professional growth for both of us. And what's really helped was understanding who we are at that beginning. And I mean, we're all professionals here, and we've all had to go through so much education, and there was a lot of growth and a lot of hardship going through, medical education. But this time, this is you're getting to apply those medical skills that you have, but now this is in a realm of where you're creating the borders of what is demanded of you. And so you can really take time to build a good foundation here that you don't need to feel rushed. But take action, be clear on who you are, and then take that step to build that great team.
Alrighty, and thank you so much for getting to the end. And as we wrap up, I'm totally going to invite you to subscribe to the podcast, whether it's on Apple, Spotify, Overcast, any of the platforms, whichever one you're using. And then we will be having more episodes. So if you stay tuned, we will be talking about how much does it cost to actually start up a ketamine clinic. So please go ahead and stay tuned. And do me one last favor. This is our first podcast episode. So if you could give us a 5-star rating and review, that will help us get higher and get more people to become aware of this podcast. And we're just so excited to share all of our information with you. And we're grateful for the work you're doing. Thank you.